Hello my dear friends, and welcome back to another video. So we just got Andor episode 4 Aldhani, and 2 days after it dropped we're still discussing the nitty gritty of the episode. Aside from the sheer amount of artifacts in Luthen's gallery on Coruscant, one of the biggest questions we have right now is how Luthen got his hands on all of them. Not just that, but who is he, and why hasn't the Empire confiscated his valuables and arrested him? Well, in today's video I'm going to try and explain this, and then I'm going to dive into a theory that might explain Luthen's connection to Kyber crystals, Jedi and Sith history, and how he got into collecting in the first place. But before we dive into it, my dear Mandalorians, please be sure to hit that big red subscribe button down below if you've not done so, and also give that bell a good old tickle to be alerted every time that I post a video like this one. But without much further ado, and without any more jibber jabber, let's dive straight into it. So I want to start by answering the easiest of these questions. Why doesn't the Empire just confiscate Luthen's artifacts? After all, the gallery is literally on Coruscant, and in direct sight of some of the highest ranking Imperials, not to mention the ruling council and the Vizier. Well, to my mind, there are two possible answers. Either the artifacts are all fakes, which would put into question a lot of Luthen's true intentions, or option B, which I prefer, the Empire simply doesn't care, and here's why. It's been about 14 years since Order 66. The early Empire immediately rewrote history and made the galaxy forget the Jedi, the Sith, and the Force as a concept. And with all of the propaganda, the galaxy forgot remarkably quickly. At first, the Empire burned all of the Jedi's lightsabers, calling them evil and scheming to take over the galaxy, but a lot of actual relics were lost or forgotten. Now, Luthen may have waited a few years to open his gallery, and when he did, the vast majority of the population, including Imperial officers, didn't know what most of the artifacts were. Just look at the sheer confusion and uncertainty on the face of Mon Mothma's driver. Now you might be wondering, well, what about Palpatine? Well, if these relics are no threat to him, and the vast majority of people don't know what they are, he probably couldn't care less, as long as in his mind, the galaxy is somewhat brainwashed. Now, one thing I cannot answer though, is why neither he or Darth Vader can sense the Jedi holocrons, unless of course, as I said, they're fake. And speaking of which, let's talk a little bit more about those Jedi and Sith holocrons. A big question we've got to ask ourselves is how did Luthen get his hands on a lot of this stuff? Not to mention his Coati signet, which has connections all the way back to the Infinite Empire and the Rakatans. While the vast majority of his backstory remains a mystery, Luthen being in possession of the holocrons, in my opinion, strongly suggests a connection to Jocasta Nu and the final days of her life. If you've watched Attack of the Clones and the Clone Wars, then you'll know that Jocasta Nu was the Jedi Temple librarian, but she was also the keeper of the archives and an expert on Jedi history and artifacts. At some stage, she might have come across Luthen, likely just after the Jedi Purge. In case you haven't read the Vader comics, Jocasta Nu initially survived the early stages of Order 66. She went into hiding at an unknown location. She took some holocrons with her, as well as vital information on the history of the Jedi Order, in an attempt to preserve it and start a new school for young Jedi. Jocasta's name was on a list of possible survivors, which Darth Sidious gave to the Grand Inquisitor. He was absolutely shocked that Nu survived because he'd never seen her fight one day in her life. And so, the Inquisitors were instructed to find Jocasta, and the biggest reason for this is that Palpatine knew that Jocasta could access the Jedi archives, and he did not want her gaining any more information. Now, as we know, Jocasta Nu served at the Jedi Temple for decades. She knew everything about the archives, including every Jedi relic, and Palpatine was genuinely afraid. He knew she would not be easy to arrest. So at the unknown hiding place, Jocasta, who spent a lot of time with her assistant Gar, remembered that the Jedi archives contained some vital holocrons, one with a list of every Force-sensitive child in the galaxy. And so she decided to be brave and go to Coruscant to rescue them. When she got there, she tried to sneak into the former Jedi Temple. Imperial shock troopers found her and demanded that she identify herself, but she was able to escape with ease with a simple Jedi mind trick.
We don't need to see his identification.
So once inside the temple, she was shocked at the devastation the Empire caused. This was not the same temple she knew. She snuck into the archives, and there she spotted the Grand Inquisitor himself, poring over knowledge that she once kept. Jocasta was furious that the Empire was using the archives, but forced herself to focus on the mission. Entering a secret vault within the archives, Jocasta retrieved the holocron. Relieved, it was still there. She was confident that with the holocron, the Jedi would one day return, and in time, overthrow the Empire. Unfortunately though, that night Jocasta met her fate at the hands of Darth Vader, who she knew was once upon a time Anakin Skywalker. Now, while she was unsuccessful in retrieving the holocrons, there were still many that remained with her assistant Gar in the hiding place. My theory is that during this time, she was in contact with Luthen Rael, who might even be related to her, or maybe to her assistant. But whatever the connection there, he might have helped to get access to Coruscant and sneak in discreetly, and so when Vader eventually killed her, Luthen was one of the only people who knew about Jocasta's hideout, and he went there to collect what he could: holocrons, Jedi artifacts, and so on. And losing Jocasta could explain his leading motivation for being anti-imperial, because that's not been explained yet. Alternatively, Luthen might have been a resident on the planet where the hideout was, and was in the right place at the right time when Jocasta died. Jocasta, as a former archivist, would certainly be a person of interest for Luthen, even if the two weren't related. The problem is, Luthen's backstory is a complete mystery at this point, and it's pretty clear that Tony Gilroy wrote him to be that way. We're not supposed to fully trust him just yet. And some fans pointed out parallels between the character of Luthen and Grand Admiral Thrawn. Even though they're on different sides of the fence, they're both highly intelligent art collectors. I wonder if the two will have a run-in at some stage, if they've not already done so. So those are my theories and thoughts at this point. Luthen also seems to know quite a lot about Kyber crystals, one of Jocasta Nu's specialties and points of expertise. He's even learned how to power a ship using them, and the thing is, at this stage, we can only take a guess at all of these mysteries, but I imagine in time, we will get explanations. And so one final thing, my dear friends, Andor is now 4 episodes in, and I just wanted to talk a little bit about fan reception. Is the show good for the Star Wars fandom? How are fans reacting? And what's the overall verdict? Well, generally it's been really positive, way more positive than the Book of Boba Fett and the Kenobi series. The writing, the visuals and acting are all of much higher quality, but even in terms of substance, we're seeing some really healthy fan debates, discussions, all across social media and YouTube. It's been really refreshing and so great to see. I even asked you guys in the community tab what you thought of episode 4, and here is just a brief breakdown of the responses. So 35% said amazing, 33% said it was solid, 10% said it was okay, 5% said no, and 17% haven't seen it. So it appears as though across several communities and on social media, fans are really enjoying this one, and if you're not, that's completely fine too. I do understand this is not for everyone, especially for fans who got into Star Wars absolutely loving the concept of the Force, the lightsabers, the action. For fans who prefer that kind of thing, there are going to be shows catered to that, but this one is very much a spy thriller, but I do understand if it's not everyone's cup of tea. But with that said, my dear friends, share your thoughts in the comments down below. Are you excited for episode 5? If you enjoyed this video, as always, please be sure to give me a big fat thumbs up, subscribe if you're new, and if you want more videos not found here on YouTube, then click the link down there in the description. But until the next one, my dear friends, may the Force be with you always. I'm Star Wars Meg. Have a good one.